you all. I connect immediately to what Dimitri already mentioned, because he mentioned two things that are very important to me. First of all, that there is a perception that theory of constraints is a kind of cult or religion or something like this, but this is really, really, really untrue. And there is something that I like to tell you. In theory of constraints, at least I try never to say, believe me. You don't need to believe me. I try to convince by logic, by arguments, by discussion, by logic. You don't need to believe. So this has nothing to do with cult or culture. The other thing is about theory, that it got the name, that like in the academia develops theory, but it does not work in reality. Okay, this all depends on us. And I like now, what is a small part of a theory is for me an insight. So when I was thinking, I'm going to speak to people in which some of you already have good knowledge of the theory of constraints, but some of you may have very little knowledge. So what can I do that will be good for all of you? So on one hand, I wanted to go to the basics, but to speak on the very high level and maybe highlight it in a little bit different way. So I really wanted to speak about the key insights of TOC. Look, I don't think in 1 hour I will be able to cover all my slides, but I intentionally gave all my slides to be translated, so at least you can go through them after it and complete the thing for yourself. Okay. When I was thinking about insights, so I went a little bit to Google to try to find out what are the common definitions for an insight. So I found this one, an understanding of the true nature of something. So it's about understanding. Another one is more detailed. The understanding of relationship that sheds light on or helps solve a problem. So first of all, you need a connection. There is a problem, and we need something to shed new light into it. So this is an insight. And there is another definition, that the ability to have a clear, deep, and sometimes sudden understanding of a complicated problem or situation. Now here comes a sudden, which means sometimes we have a difficulty, and then out of the blue, somewhere, we know how to treat it. So this sudden understanding is basic to an insight. So I came in with my own understanding coming from the theory of constraints, and I try to say, this is my definition. A generic cause and effect branch, which means logic. I now understand the logic. That suddenly becomes clear, because it was not clear to me before, and now I see how it works, and in this format that is very sort of high level, I can apply it to many environments. Well, do you see the big difference between I have a very specific problem and now I have a solution to, or I have an idea that can actually solve many different problems at different environment? There is a very basic difference between the two. So why should we really look to new insights and try really to understand them? Fellows, this is my argument. Every new improvement, or I would say every success, is based on a new idea, because otherwise all the other people have already done it. Do you see? Every success is based on a new idea. Now, we can have just a very specific idea that will give us this success, or we will try to generalize. What is this in this idea that is applicable not only for this problem or this environment, but for much more? Then we have a much wider value. And so if we don't really question the ideas that we have to solve a specific problem and try to move them to higher level, we miss quite a lot of opportunities. Fellows, because I am working with so many different organizations, let me tell you that there are so many great ideas that somehow are coming in one environment, and they could be applicable in so many environments, but no one in the other environment have any idea about them. Even though they work, they are known, but they are known only in a specific level, and no one was thinking, hey, it could work also here. Oh, yes, of course, there need to be some differences, but it could work here. Think a little bit about, really about trees who really came from engineering, from physics, etc. And yes, it could be moved to other areas. One thing is, whatever you do, you share quite a lot of paradigms with your competitors. In order to make a very good breakthrough, you need to come up with some things that your competitors right now do not recognize, do not understand, do not see the outcome of this. Is this very clear? This is the only way to get ahead. So we need to look on these kind of paradigms that we have, and this is an insight suddenly to understand something that is not absolutely in line with the current paradigm. This is an insight. And so, if we don't have an insight, we are stuck within the normal competition. Fellow, between you and me, this is one of the most basic strategic conflicts. Because any business takes this hotel. The first thing is, let us make a hotel that is very similar to any other hotel in the world. Which means taking all the paradigms about the size of the rooms and where the reception is located and where the restaurant is located and how elevators should work, all of these kind of things that it's just an imitation. But in order to make a breakthrough, we need something else, another idea that will challenge a certain paradigm, and then we are different, and maybe we give a new value, and maybe we are now the head of the whole business area. And so we have the following choices. Spot signals that one of our paradigms does not match reality. This is the way where we look for our own new insights. How can we somehow, how do I think? Why I think that we need this size of the room and why it needs to be square, okay? And then maybe we will spot thought something that does not really match this, and then maybe we have our own inspiration for a new insight. But there is another way, and it could work beautifully sometimes, which is to learn new insights from others. So, but then I need to go out of this environment in which everybody shares the same paradigms, and I need to look elsewhere. And there are huge amount of ideas there. You know, I was also kind of involved in several technology breakthrough in medicine. And do you know what the medicine people tell me? They have a huge amount of problems in which to many of them there is already a solution, technical solution that really relates to this medical area. But the technical solution was created in a certain technical environment. They know no idea about how can it apply to medicine, and the medicine people are not aware that such kind of a possibility already exists. So we need somehow to bring the two things together and suddenly get that insight that is already was done, and there is already proof that it works, and put it here, and yes, it works. And so many times in medicine they have found already solutions that existed 20 or 30 years ago, and suddenly, okay, we can use it now and do great things. I am concentrated on 8 POC basic insights that each one of them I think is much more powerful than the current applications. First one is the main constraint. And I came to a little bit different view about what is it that is a little bit different than when Goldratt have coined it. Because Goldratt said the constraint is something that limits the system. And after some time to look on what limits the system and what other things limit the system, I came to realize, you can argue with me, that a constraint is limiting a flow. Now in a system there are many flows. In a business system there is a flow of service to the clients. There is a flow of money coming in, also money going out. There is a flow of people physically coming into and out of the building. There are many flows. But actually there are 2 critical flows for any business. These are the 2 critical. One is really the service of the product going to the clients. I know that the money is also important, but normally it works. There is another flow in which we like now to improve our organization, so we have huge amount of ideas. What should we do to improve? And we need to put it into work. In other words, we have now a flow. The flow is limited by a constraint, but we now think about the future flow. And this is a flow in itself. Flow of ideas and improvement projects. And these are the 2 critical flows. Each one of them is constrained. And so, a constraint is something that if you draw more, you get more. You get more flow. If you impact your constraint positively, and if you impact it negatively, you get less. And here is a related insight. You say any flow can handle only very few constraints, usually only one. Fellow, this is an insight that existed before, but people did not want to recognize it. So Goldwyn did not invent it, but he put quite a lot of energy and efforts to make it very clear and to show in reality how much it is true. Because when I asked quite a lot of management in the past, I've asked, tell me, what blocks your organization from making, let us say, more money? If you're a business organization, what prevents you from making more money? And the usual answer is, well, there are many reasons. Well, many reasons, it means you are not focused. Because one is the actual one, the others are to much less degree, if at all. This is something just to make it in perspective. Because the common paradigm is we have many constraints. Actually, and this is what I did when I first joined Goldwyn, was to prove by simulation that if you have two interactive constraints, you get very unstable performance. Ups and downs. It's very difficult to get control of a flow that have two major constraints that interacts with each one. It's not impossible, okay? It's not impossible. It could happen, but then you have unstable system. Now, the human system, we don't tolerate instability. So Philip was telling me yesterday about, what's the name? I ran out.
Fast food?
Yes.
McDonald's.
McDonald's. Okay. If I will go into McDonald's, put an order, and I will get my order in an hour, this is intolerable, right? Right? So no matter what problems they have, this is intolerable. So human organization cannot tolerate instability, because this is the meaning of instability. If you order something, maybe you get it in 30 seconds, and maybe you get it in 2 hours. This is very unstable system. And this is the result of interactive constraints. Goldwyn developed the 5 focusing steps. I'm not going into it. But this is, each one of the steps is a revelation in how you take such kind of a system and you get it into a good control. So the system will not be unstable. And then how you improve it. Once we got into the term constraints, some thinking, some second level insight came out. First of all, there is a possibility that the constraint lies outside of the organization. Usually my question is, if you would have, by luck, 20% more clients, are you in a trouble or not? If you tell me, no problem, just let them come, okay. Your initial constraint is outside. You say, okay, it will take me 6 months to get used. Okay, let us find out where it is internal. I'm just trying to be very proximate. It's not exactly like this, but I hope you're getting the key idea. And there was always a question from strategic point of view. Should the market be the constraint, which means we can satisfy more clients, or should we have at least one internal resource that is exploited to its limits. We used to think in the 80s that it's better that the constraints lies internal to the organization, because then we could have good control of it. I think now the understanding is going the other way. Because if you have a real constraint inside, part of your market would be dissatisfied. I find out on myself, because when I started to fly a lot, and from time to time I need to change the date of my flight back. And when our national airline, El Al, told me, okay, Eli, you are allowed to change the date, but the date you want, we are fully booked up. And the day after, we are also fully booked up. I said, okay, you do have, or maybe the way you operate, you have an internal constraint, I better do with other airline. Because, what does it mean? I mean, I'm allowed to change the date, but I cannot change the date because they are fully booked up. I don't like, as a client, that my supplier is fully booked up. It limits me. Do you see my way of thinking? Okay, and because of this, now my thinking is, yes, we need some kind of a balance, but the balance is for the market. The organization needs to have, which means the constraint, needs to have enough flexibility to tolerate ups and downs in the market. Okay. When there is an internal capacity constraint, we need to be very careful about what we sell, because there is a real trade-off of what we sell. As those of you who will come to my class tomorrow, this will be quite a lot of the content. So my understanding is the vast majority, actually all, this is my view, of the resources have to have excess protective capacity. Protective means I don't want to harm my market. Because if the market will not be satisfied with me, the market will go down, and when the market goes down, anyway I don't have an internal constraint anymore, because I don't have enough demand. So here are already the two critical flows that I already have mentioned. Flow of the current value to market, which whatever products or services we supply, this is a flow, and this flow does have a constraint, and we need to be in good control of that constraint. And there are flow of initiatives to improve the future flow, and you may call this part strategy, because it means we are looking into the future and we try to be better in the future. Now, widening the scope. Here my friend Ravi came with his focus on the term cash constraint, and some extremely important new insights came from just looking on this strange behavior when cash is a resource, but also the goal of the organization becomes a constraint. I just like to say that there are two key situations in which cash constraints will pop up. One is really when there is a real threat to the organization. The organization has not enough cash to do its normal activity. This is really survival kind of thing, and then the whole point is, let us get out of this situation as fast as possible. We don't want cash constraint of this sort for several years. We will not tolerate it. We need to go out of the situation. I'd like to point out that there are some other environments in which cash is a constraint, but it does not really treat survival. Any public sector organization which is governed by a budget that came either from the government or from the city or from no matter what, donors, the budget is the limitation of the values that this organization can do. There is another situation in which, from control point of view, because we spend so much cash, so there is a kind of policy that this is the amount of cash that you are allowed to put into the system at any given point. And this is done quite a lot in distribution companies, because the value of inventory, of what they buy in order to sell, is very high. And yes, the investors are really looking, we don't want this size to go up if it is not really backed up by sales. And so we limit you. At any given point, we like to know how much money you have as inventory, and you have a certain limit. We forbid you, not that we don't have any more cash. We do have, if you prove to us how necessary it is and justify it, etc. But we don't give you the right to do it just on your own. Okay, and then again, cash is a constraint. There is a difference between what is capability, which means I know how to do something, and capacity, which means how many of those I can do in a day or a week or a month. You see, there are two different things on the same ability. First of all, do you have the ability? And then, how much of this ability you can do in a given time? Two very different things. You see, we used to think always about capacity constraints, but kind of the question is, can capability be a constraint? And so the question was a little bit, can you really exploit your capabilities, which means you take your current capability up to the very limit. Again, capability, not capacity. So, if I have a certain mathematical capability, but not beyond something, can I really come close to my limit? It's very difficult to see, and I would not dare to put it on a business. So, if I have, let us say, quality, capability up to a point, but not above, I need to say that my capability actually is lower than my limit, because I don't want to come too much near the limit and then maybe miss the whole thing. And so exploiting the capabilities, to my mind, looks right now, unless you argue and convince me differently, is something I don't want to have as a constraint. Then we have a question about the required level of protective capacity that we need on the non-constraints, and to my mind, we need also on our internal constraint. Protective capacity, which means what you should not do is to commit something to the market and not being able to deliver. Okay? And you need to have some protective capacity even on your constraint, and you need to have more on the other. But fellows, let us face it. We don't have a formula for that. We have a method in which, if this is a situation, I can tell you whether you are very close or you have enough. cannot a priori really tell you very explicit numbers how much protective capacity you should have. Let's go to the next one. And I think the next one is huge, and I call it not just buffers, I call it visible buffers as part of the planning. And the word visible, for me, it was missing before. And here is what I like. Planning is based on forecast, right? Planning is about the future. Every time we look in the future, we need a certain forecast, because we don't really know what will happen in the future. We take our best knowledge, and so we make some kind of assumptions about the future. This is forecast. Assumptions about the future. And all our planning is based on this kind of assumptions. However, from a mathematical point of view, what happens is that forecasts are based on what in mathematics called expected value, which is some kind of an average, taking probabilities into account. So, managers are getting forecasts based on one number. Well, this is a huge mistake. Because from a mathematical point of view, I can tell you, you cannot describe a stochastic function, which means function not deterministic, but could have different values depending on probability, and you cannot define it just by one number. The very minimum to get an acceptable description, you need to have two numbers, like an average and a standard deviation. Some other possibilities. But managers do not get standard deviation in the reports unless you are very different organizations than I used to. The vast majority of forecasts are giving a number. This is the way we speculate the future. And then we have plans that do not consider the impact of uncertainty. Even though when we made the forecast, we were very much aware that these are assumptions and there are probabilities here, and it could be more and it could be less, and eventually who really knows, but we need to do something. So these are the current paradigm about the vast majority of the planning that I've seen worldwide. So how should we plan? Make plan for the future. How should we protect the plan from uncertainty? The term is, you need to include buffers in your planning. Which means, I assume the market could be 1,000, but could be more. We will prepare for 1,000, but if required, we can go up to at least 1,200. So we are embedding a buffer that says we might need to have 200 more, we don't know, but we might, we hope, and so we have the capability, or maybe really we have the stock, depending on the situation. This is a buffer. Being visible means, fellows, this is a formal part of the planning. We don't hide this kind of information. It's written there that we expect on average 1,000, but we prepare for 1,200. I want to see it clearly on the planning, because everybody that gets a plan should be aware of it. This is what we are preparing for. So, this should be formal part of the planning. by this, including buffers within the plan, we achieve high certainty that the plan will be doable and the objectives would be reached. Here I have another thing. What is the objective of my planning? What I want to do? I want to commit to the market that when they ask something they will get it. Okay, for instance. Okay, I need really to back it up with high certainty. And because of this, I need to include buffers in my planning because I don't know exactly the amount of the demand, certainly not the exact time in which the demand will show itself. So we need good idea of the cost, capacity and revenues, and when we put the buffers in, we get this idea. Okay, easily come to do. And then we don't have this fear inside the organization. That means that you have committed to deliver 1,000 units. Like they ask from the salespeople to give commitments, or from the programmers to commit to how many code lines they are going to write in the next month or so. No, we need to be prepared for these quantities. Then when TOC handled buffers, there came again more understanding that we don't need buffers everywhere from everything. We need them at the critical points because of the, what are the objectives? Why we are making this planning? Because we need to make sure that this and this will happen. So when I need to make sure that on Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, I am in St. Petersburg and I need to deliver a speech, I need somehow to see that I'm not taking a flight that is supposed to land at the airport at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? This is the objective. Now speak about possibilities and now speak about what is your buffer. And when I speak about buffer, please also understand, I'm not speaking about disasters. I'm speaking about normal fluctuations. Because if, God forbid, and I have a heart attack a day before, sorry, this I could not protect from. Okay? But these are only things that are pretty much rare. Buffers are kind of expected uncertainties that you need to put yourself into good control, and so buffers need to be only at those areas. Not exactly when I take off and when I exactly land, and if there is 1.5 hours late of landing, I need to make, the only thing I need to make sure, no disaster. Okay, it's okay. Cover. That's it. In current TOC application, we had, for a long time, we had only time buffers. Only towards the end of the 90s, there was the idea, hey, we do need stock buffers and they are not the same. They are different sort of a buffer. I'm not going now into it, but it was a change of paradigm in our TOC thinking. And there are more buffers. I claim we need to have very formal capacity buffers. And those capacity buffers are the means to increase capacity when we run out of it, when our normal capacity ran out. So sometimes it's just overtime, but fellowship, we need to have this kind of agreement with our people that when we need overtime, they will be able to give us overtime. It's not coming if you did not prepare. All kinds of means. Overtime, temporary workers, outsourcing is a mean for capacity buffers. Look, even things like airlines, they do have capacity buffers by making agreement with competitive airlines. And so if they need to cancel a flight, no matter why, there are already some kind of arrangements that they can move the passenger to the competitor flights, right? This, again, it's something that is worked out. It's not done you know, just when there is, the phones are ringing. There are already kind of agreement that this is our cover because we need and we cannot put a different sort of a buffer. I think we should establish very formal cash or money or liquidation, whatever you call it, buffers, to make sure that we do not by accident go below the work capital that we really need in order to run the business. Because then we run into kind of trouble that we don't want to have. And we need to have this in a formal way. And I already talked about capability, and here again, some kind of understanding needs to be. I need to prepare in my organization that the overall we will have more capabilities than just the theoretical levels that we need. We need people that have, for instance, the ability to learn something new pretty quickly. This is huge capability buffer. And in the current technology, fast development of technology, capability buffers could be the difference between a successful company and someone going down. Third, what is the insight of buffer management? Huge insight. Well, it took me years to struggle with what does it mean and how new it is, and it is not part of the basic idea of a buffer. If we already have put a buffer in, if we monitor the state of the buffer, it comes up and tells us whether the buffer is enough and also whether there is a need for special management attention. And fellows, this is a huge revelation because I did not find it anywhere else that you see. If you see something that has this kind of idea. Telling us special effort that needs to be done, otherwise there will be missing, and the future planning would need maybe to increase the buffer or find a better solution. Fellow, this is a huge revelation because it sets a relationship between the planning and the execution that was not there anywhere else. Look, I studied from a real genius, and I was very close to him. It was not always easy, it was not always pleasant, but it was always inspiring. So here was one day, and I really remember it, that Eli Goldberg said something, that the rules behind planning are very different than the rules behind execution. And I remember even saying to him, do you know what, Eli, I have about 6 months later, I have a presentation at APIX, a very big conference. I would like to speak about it, and until then I need to think about it. Because it's already something that makes things different. If you look on the vast majority of the software, like MRP, but also like CPM, quite a lot of software, they sort of both planning and execution together. Because sort of what you have planned and you go through the plan is how you should do this, how you should execute the plan. And here Eli came, no, the rules are different. In the planning, you need to have quite a lot of flexibility. And how to use this flexibility depends quite a lot on the state of the buffers, in which you can know only when you are in the execution stage. Well, I don't know if I am fully understood, but please, you will later check this slide to see again what does it mean, because the state of the buffer generates priorities. Priorities that are not included in the planning, because the planning cannot know what will go smooth and where some problems will start to go up. And so you cannot really tell us the priorities. The priorities in the planning are usually wrong. They say a client A is more important than client B. So many times we just like to make sure that client A will get, and then we fail client B for nothing. We could satisfy both. Only if buffer management will put in, we will know when we need somehow to give higher priority to client B, because client A has no problem. We will supply in time, no problem. Client B is now the question. And so this revelation is huge. And as I say, it could be spread to areas in which Goldnut or me could not see. I'm fully confident that the ramification of this understanding is huge. And it could be done in banking and in science and in art and certainly in running a country. Goldnut, to start with, gave us colors to describe, and this again is kind of an insight. You do not need to be precise, okay? But you need to be good enough. And so green, yellow, red, well, green means there is a lot of buffer ahead, so everything is going smooth, maybe even too smooth. Yellow is where, well, it's about okay. Yes, you are using your buffer, but not too much. It's about okay. And then there is red, and red means you are almost late, or you are almost short, or you are almost on the verge of a problem. This is the time to take some special action, maybe management attention. There are two exceptions. One, which means black. You are already late. There is already damage. And when it's too much buffer, and too much buffer is bad, fellows. This is, again, one of our most important insights. You don't need the biggest buffer. You need a good enough buffer, because too big buffers spoils all your priorities. Another one, throughput, huge one. The original definition was the pace at which the system generates gold units. So for profit organization, it came to be revenues minus the truly variable cost. Because what's the idea? The idea is we are a business organization, we want money. But of course, money going out, money coming in. So we need the money coming in minus the absolutely certain money that was going out. So this gives you some kind of a focus on the added value. So truly variable cost are the expenses occur every time the unit is sold. And there is an alternative definition, you choose what you like, sales less any cost that move with each sale. Move with each sale, which makes it linear. And sales reflect the added value to the clients. And so for me, the alternative definition of throughput, look at it from my perspective, is the added value generated by the organization. Which means how much the organization gains from its existence. So if I buy something for $1 and I sell it for $1.2, my contribution to it, my added value to it is $0.2. Okay, this is from my point of view. Which brings the whole TOC performance measurement. There are two different levels of throughput, and it's very important that we will see the difference. Because the first one, it's always the first. Look on the summation, look on the whole. Always keep the whole, because this is a picture of the added values that you have achieved at a certain period of time. This is the added value. But then, in order to help you with all kinds of decisions and actions and things, look also on number 2. What is the throughput that will be generated by this sale or this client or whatever you do? Because whatever you do eventually is for making throughput. Now, in order to generate throughput, we still need money. And normally it is divided between two different measurements. So we have investment, which means we put money into the future. We hope to get it back eventually, but this is money that's going into. And these are the expenses that we put, and we hope to get it back relatively soon. So fellow, actually from my own point of view, for me they are the same. The difference is when you put the money, when you put off your money, how long you expect to get the contribution from your investment. Operating expenses, if it's relatively short, which means within this year. Investment means I put now money and I hope to get the contribution of it in the next 10 years, like when I buy a machine or something that should be usable in the next 10 years or so. This is a technical difference, and it can be, tell me about 10 minutes before. I know I'm going to finish. Going into the throughput has some unique qualities that the accounting world did not recognize. By the way, in the accounting world there are some terminologies that look similar to it, but eventually all the intention and the use are not exactly the same. So you have what is called marginal costing or direct costing, which looks sort of similar, but they lack the overall view. They sort of similar when you look on one deal, but they forget that there is an overall view in which throughput does not forget. It always looks eventually to what happens to the total and for the longer time frame. So, making throughput, the added value of the organization, is certainly where management should focus on. So I'm not saying that spending too much operating expenses is good, but if you focus just on saving it, hey, where is your focus? This is of a limited value and here is of a huge value. So the generic rule is, this is kind of going ahead, constantly strive to grow throughput faster than operating expenses. Okay? So you look on the two, but the pressure is grow throughput. And yes, you like very much to grow it, much faster than OE, then you have sort of, I don't need even to look too much on the OE. The surprising thing, when you really focus on throughput, your decision making becomes much simpler. And this is because, kind of genius, revenues minus truly variable costs behave, generally speaking, very linear. If sales grows by 20%, throughput, generally speaking, went up 20%. No. Again, I know when you sell quite a lot, you need to give reduction in price. This is a little bit spoils the linearity, but not by a big thing. Generally speaking, it behaves linearly. But when you look into OE and I, fellow, they do not behave in a linear way. And tomorrow, those of you who are going to my class, this will be what will derive quite a lot of the day to understand the non-linear behavior of operating expenses of capacity. So what happens is that when sales grow a little bit, say 1% up, normally OE will not make any change. It will stay, which means the whole 1% of more sales, the whole revenues are going all the way to the bottom line. Now, in the bottom line, it's much more than 1% if you look relatively to the bottom line. So, bottom line suddenly jumped. Only 1%. There is something else about the decision making. What information do I need is very different when I look on it. What makes OE going up is always cost of capacity. I look internally, I look what's going on to my capacity, why do I need to? When I look on T, I look mainly on the sales. Only if you tell me that there are a huge change in the truly variable cost, because I don't know, the supply increases the price. Only then I need to look to somewhere else. But then, here I look only on the sales, here I'm looking only internally. It's much easier. I have two different areas to look for, because eventually I like to compare delta T to delta OE or delta I in order to see whether my decision is about right or not. So this is the delta profit, generally speaking, equals delta T minus delta OE. And here comes the thing that these two are different areas to look for. Well, I hope I have time to cover this. Okay. Because here comes another insight, basic, huge insight. Every practical problem, every one, what you feel is a problem, is actually a conflict between two different lines of action. On one way I need to do this, on the other way I need to do this. Those two are conflicting. I cannot do both. Like, I cannot increase the price and at the same time have more items sold. Okay? I cannot imitate my competitors and at the same time produce something new. These are conflicts between two lines of action. Because it could be conflict between two people. That one likes to get more employees and the other would like to fire more employees. Okay, but it is the same thing, it's a conflict between two lines of action. So, to do or not to do, this is one type. Should we do this or not? Should we invest money or not? Or to do X, the conflict is doing X versus doing Y because, from whatever reason, we think we cannot do both. So, could be a conflict between two people. So, each line has important need. The real insight here, every line of action supports a need. And what creates a conflict is you like to have both needs satisfied. But you have a conflict in the action. Now, the usual way when we have a conflict is to find a good enough compromise. Problem is with the compromise that it dissatisfies or taking over the two needs are not fulfilled, both needs. And so, going to the next one. God created a mechanism in which we start with a conflict. I always describe from the conflict because this is what I see in reality. You are hesitating between doing X and doing Y. Now, why you are hesitating? Because you need X in order to achieve something, but you need to do Y in order to achieve something else. And it looks like that in order to satisfy your objective, you need both. Fellows, this is a powerful presentation of a problem. Okay? So the structure is, okay, you do all the three. Okay, so here is the overall. Here are the two different actions. Here, X and Y, I need actions or proposed actions, and I assume that they are in conflict. I cannot do both. Here I have the needs, and here I have what I really look for. This is what I really need. And this is where we are, and we like to do, you know what can we do in order that we will eventually come up to one action, maybe several actions, that will support both needs. This is our desire. But in order to achieve this desire, we need to do something using our inspiration. So we need to go and to challenge our assumption. Because here is something concrete, because why we need X in order to achieve A, we have some, we can explain it. So look forward to, can you challenge can you challenge it? Can you still get the need without doing exactly that action? And the same thing to do on the other leg. So we look under the causality. Why do you claim that in order to achieve the need that is written in B, you really need an action that you have written as D in the previous structure? It's enough that we will find one assumption or one error that we can challenge, and we have already a solution on our hand. By the way, we will still need to check the solution in order to make sure that the solution solution does not create a bigger problem. But just for the conflict, challenging one already produces a possible solution. So we need to try to assume why we really claim, what are the paradigms or the assumptions that lead us into. Now let me make it even more wider. The non-stop search for challenging existing common assumptions is a key TOC insight. So this is a very good structure. But the meaning of checking basic paradigms is overall. So whether you have verbalized it in this way or not. Well, this is all about looking for good solution and looking for breakthrough and looking for anything that is really valuable, somehow means challenging an existing assumption, basic assumptions that you have in your mind. And one needs to get used to it. Well, just kind of a note. I used to be a programmer. There is one thing that I think every programmer from a mentality point of view had to overcome. Because what happens when I write code is I write code because I'm so clever, and then the computer tells me, Eli, you are an idiot. It does not work. See what happens. And it happened every single time. The only good news is it happens to everyone trying to write code, right? I assume there are people here who once in their lives have written code, right? Fellow, when it happened to me, I came to think, just a minute, if I'm doing so many mistakes, apparently I'm doing it all over the place, which means when there is no computer to tell me how idiot I am. And so I need something to learn about myself and looking, do I see in reality signals that means that I have a bug? Okay? But this is a painful way. It was painful for me at the time to realize how there is no real way that I can write amount of code without any bug to start with. Somehow it never happened. So it tells us quite a lot, I think, about our regular life as well. Okay. So, fellows, this is part of the overall reality of theory of constraints, including challenging the basic paradigms of the theory of constraints. And I can tell you that back in '85, in my first year working with Eli Goldratt, and I was there when he came with the 5 focusing steps, and for me it was a huge revelation. And then he told me, Eli, at some time in the future, you will see something wrong in it. And I hope you will be able to fix it and go on. Fellows, this is what I believe Goldratt was, because Goldratt was this kind of a guy who changed his view and did it publicly. But I said once this and it was wrong. Now I revert to, and here are the reasons. Oh, I'm sorry. Inherent simplicity. The key insight is every human-based system has to be internally simple. Fellows, you see, we sometimes use complexity as a very nice, first of all, proof that we are very, very, very brilliant. brilliant people, and so we can tackle complexity, even though between you and me, we cannot. Fellows, I study mathematics, okay? And then Eli Goldratt, who was a physicist, close enough, and he actually told me that, for instance, operations research is a very good way to come up with a complex solution to a very simple problem. Which means, fellow, when we look on our world, we cannot tolerate complexity. Certainly organization cannot handle complexity. And then Eli told me, when complexity has on top of it, has uncertainty, now it should be clear to everyone that the only way to handle it is by simplicity. So there need to be a very simple structure that maybe you don't see. And then he told me, and I am not going exactly according to this, but this is a content. And he gave me all his people as kind of advice. When you look on the system that looks to you too complex, take kind of a step back and look on a bigger picture, because there need to be a bigger picture. And then suddenly you will see the simplicity. And fellow, it works every time. Because somewhere there is a conference of TOC-ICO in Berlin. I'm going to speak about the tricky side of capacity. Because capacity is always telling me how complicated are all those issues. We have these kind of resources called ovens. And in ovens, it does not process one unit at a time. You put many units into it, sometimes many orders into it, and it works on all of them. So it's very different behavior than a line that is working one by one by one by one. The question is, okay, so what? How do you use the oven in the most optimal way? For me, it's very simple. Don't ever think that you can use your oven in the most optimal way, period. Don't ever flatter yourself because it's unsolvable. You need to have flexibility. You need to have enough stuff before your oven in order that on the spot you will decide what should go into it. Okay? Fellows, all these are insights that can go almost anywhere. These insights about the inherent simplicity in any, I would say, human-based systems is of a huge value. And I know there are all kinds of clever people trying to look for now new complexity area of science. Fellows, for human-based organization, let me tell you again, it will not work. We need to make a decision, we need to have people, we need to have money, we need some simple rules, because otherwise nothing would ever work and we will have unstable organizations. But we don't tolerate unstable organization. So, from this comes another realization about simplicity. Eventually, every single organization is caught under a certain core problem. In one conflict, that because you try to do this and that at the same time and they are clashing with each other, you don't get the full value of what you hoped for. Which means behind this conflict there is some kind of an assumption that should be challenged. this eventually led Goldberg to develop the strategy outline, which are the insights that I probably don't have time to talk today, but it appears at least in the higher level on this presentation, so you can go on from the idea about decisive competitive edge that you must develop in order to be I would say, significantly above your immediate competitors. And you need to invent it, which means you need to challenge a paradigm that right now exists throughout this business area in which you operate. Has to be. When you succeed to do it, you will create a wave in the whole industry. One of my favorite, I would say, business sectors to look at are the airlines. First of all, they are unique. They have some unique ideas that no one else tried even to copy. They have a dynamic pricing system in which we, simple clients, somehow suffer from it, but when they all do it because they imitate each other, they can. So every day the price of a certain flight changes, and they take huge advantage of it. They are doing quite a lot of good things. Eventually, almost all of them are losing huge amount of money because some other things are doing so wrong. And what does it mean, a wave? Fellows, they suffered at least 2 waves of airlines that suddenly change the rules of the game and start to operate differently, and they cause this huge wave. The first happened around 1970 with a company called People, in which they moved people from the UK to the US, very cheap, operated like a bus. Fortunately, they collapsed, bankrupt. They were not fully ready. But then it repeated itself in the middle of the 80s. Southwest was the first. Then came Ryanair and EasyJet and so many others. But still today, the big guys are looking, what do we do with this? Can we imitate them? But if we imitate them, what is our regular thing? They still could not do what the hell it's done because somebody changed the rules. Southwest is still very profitable, by the way, the original one. So fellows, take it as a kind of an overall insight to look on your world, to look also into your sea as, first of all, supplier of so many insights that you can take and maybe put in a different way that UC did in its own applications, because it can be used, but also as a kind of encouragement to you to develop your own new insights or steal it from others, but then you need to look on different business sectors, not in use, outside, because there is. I still seem to know, because I look on the airlines, on this excellent invention of frequent flyer program. Eventually, all the airlines imitated each other from it, right? But fellows, do every company would like to have loyalty of customers? Then can we take this basic idea, see what ingredients work, what can be translated to our area, and make it our decisive competitive edge, because if we do it, all the rest, it will take them years to understand how we hit the goal. Okay, I hope you got my key ideas and messages to you. If you like to ask me questions, maybe later through lunch or so, but I assume you like to go ahead right now. come to me to ask, challenge me, feel free.